Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. I know it's been long delayed, but today I'm finally going to be ranking animated movies from last year. However, I need to make a few rules first. 1. I won't be counting live-action hybrids. Sorry SpongeBob fans. 2. No movies based on TV shows that I've never watched. 3. Movies made by religious cults or angel studios are off the table. 4. I will not be including animated films that are unavailable to stream right now in the UK. With all of that out of the way, let's get ranking. The Twits. Mr. and Mrs. Twit are a pair of scamming con artists that are running a rundown theme park. In order to weasel their way out of laws that are hindering their attraction, they turn to manipulating the public into voting them into the mayor office. So, Orphans, Bijou and Bubsy team up with the Twits' formerly imprisoned Mugglewumps to expose these scumbags as the crooks that they are. It takes a lot to make me use this word, but I truly hate this movie. It's a loathsome adaptation of one of my favorite doll books that really frustrates me on so many levels. For starters, The Twits is actually one of Roald's shorter stories, and Netflix did a very poor job at hiding their obvious struggle to expand it into a feature film. Instead of keeping things simple and sticking to the crux of the book's charms, this film goes to extreme lengths to overcompensate for its small material with desperate spectacle or try-hard whimsy. From turning the Mugglewumps from a unique monkey species to full-on magical creatures, to swapping out the Twits' diminishing circus for an over-the-top amusement park.
Welcome, Twit-heads, to the re-grand opening of Twitlandia! We are bigger and better than ever!
Now yes, the Twits are pretty gross and horrible villains in the book, but Netflix clearly abused this fact to try and get away with making them as obnoxious, grotesque and insufferable as possible, resulting in baddies that are just plain annoying, deeply unfunny, and not even all that intimidating.
The cities, they're shutting down our food part!
To rub salt in the wound, the movie is also laced with the lowest of the low humour, whether that means relying on excessive mean spirit for shock value, or over-depending on cheap yuck-out jokes.
A vote for John John is a vote for fun!
Even when the film does try to have any heart, it's all channeled through irritating holier-than-thou preachiness. Not only is Bijou's character growth very unnatural, because our whimsical side characters end up literally shoving her lesson right in her face, as apparently kids are too stupid to learn things on their own.
The way I see it, family isn't just who you're related to, it's who you care about.
But the movie also has a smug, fence-sitting approach to morality, in which it tries to self-righteously insist that we show compassion to abusive, apathetic monsters and their selfish sellout supporters, or we're inherently bad people that deserve to be punished. A sanctimonious and black and white oversimplification of human virtue that screams centrist bias. This is an embarrassingly atrocious movie that loves the smell of its own farts, and a disastrous attempt at turning a doll classic into animated cinema. If only Netflix just made a book-accurate little Twitch short film instead. Fixed, Bull is a very randy dog that's driving his family crazy with his libido, so his owners plan to neuter him, completely to Bull's horror. Look, despite my accent, I'm no snobbish prude. I can have a crass sense of humour, but Fixed is nowhere near as funny as it thinks it is, as the film either retreads gags that we've seen many times in other talking animal comedies.
All right, break it up already. I'm here every day. It's the same ass as yesterday.
Or recycles the one shallow joke of cartoon animals being vulgar.
What's a flaxseed protein bar? It's just a little pre-playtime pick-me-up.
Lucky. You're eating cat.
What? No way.
With the film resting its humour's entire appeal on the shock of talking animals acting obscene, under the assumption that that's enough to make a comedy movie stand out, even though raunchy furry cartoons have existed since the 70s. And let's not forget that Strays came out just 2 years before Fixed. Those who don't find this film to be funny won't be left with all that much, because it's these tacky one-note jokes that drive the film's overall structure, and so we end up with a very directionless movie that can't pick a plot to stick to.
Now what the hell are we gonna do about all these
A grotesque and uncomfortable film that follows an insufferably whiny and self-pitying main character with sex on the brain 24/7.
Oh, my sweet, sweet honey. No way she's gonna want a fat, ballless, no pup making freak.
Who has all the charm of wet, soggy toilet paper, yet gets a romance story that desperately wants us to believe that this wallowing windbag has a secret admirer?
I love you too. Ever since we were pups.
Don't expect much clever satire either. Sure, the film will sometimes bring up societal issues, like when it uses a dog show to parody the dark side of beauty pageants. But Fixed only lightly tickles these topics and abandons them as fast as they've been brought up. I can't even fully admire the film's unapologetic openness about sex too, because while we do get a very sweet coming out subplot and a positive portrayal of an intersex character that affectionately guides the latter's journey,
but perhaps you fixate on the external because you are scared of something which lies inside. I know this feeling well.
the movie also disturbingly sometimes approaches consent with a lot of tactless irresponsibility, and so a couple sex scenes are just plain horrifying. The one and only saving grace for this nothing burger of a movie is Genndy Tartakovsky's S-tier fluid and detailed animation, which has a very expressive and quirky style that harks back to his Cartoon Network days. What a waste of this legend's talent. Tom and Jerry, The Forbidden Compass. When Jerry tries to sneak into a museum being guarded by Tom, the cat and mouse accidentally trigger an ancient compass into magically sending them to period China, where they meet the Phoenix Master, who needs the compass to get into heaven. This movie's exhaustingly rapid pacing results in a film that's all frantic energy and no substance. Or because the movie skips through so many of its scenes that it ends up neglecting opportunities to invest the audience, make us care about what's going on, or feel anything at all for these otherworldly characters. For example, the movie really wants us to root for the Phoenix Master's chances of returning to heaven, yet he spends most of his screen time acting like a selfish, manipulative jerk.
Winners climb the ladder, losers slide down it. Are you really okay being called ridiculous roof-squatting freaks?
Then, in the third act, the film desperately resorts to shoehorning in last-minute flashbacks or scenes of brown-nosing villagers in a bid to emotionally manipulate the audience into cheering on this clown in the finale. Not to mention, every attempt at a big dramatic scene, like a lies reveal moment or the villain unveiling his true intent, it always falls flatter than a pancake, because the movie's relationship building has been haphazardly skipped or rushed over.
It's not important to me if you're a real god or not. Only that you aren't a liar.
Now, a blending of Chinese folklore and Tom and Jerry might sound fun on paper. However, the film puts so much emphasis on its fantasy world building and Phoenix Master's personal arc that Tom and Jerry themselves just end up feeling like tacked on IP to sell more tickets. Not to mention, this film also fails to realize what made the classic Tom and Jerry short so timeless. Because while the original cartoons relied on slick timing and subtle pauses to be funny, The Forbidden Compass foolishly mistakes obnoxious and unflinching noisy chaos for comedy gold.
Hit the brakes! Slow down!
This is honestly the worst Tom and Jerry movie to date. Yes, even worse than the boring hybrid movie or the pointless Willy Wonka crossover cash grab. It's that bad, folks. Grand Prix of Europe. Eda works at her dad's struggling fairground for a living, but she dreams of becoming a famous race car driver. So when she ends up accidentally injuring celebrity racer Ed, Eda agrees to pretend to be a hero while planning to use the Grand Prix prize money to save her father's business. This German animated film was actually made to mark the 50th anniversary of Europa Park, a theme park that features Ed and Eda themselves as its official mascots. Unfortunately, Grand Prix of Europe is quite possibly the worst theatrical cartoon racing movie since Cars 2 or Rally Road Racers. A frustratingly bad sports flick that suffers from problem after problem. First of all, Eda is a reckless, impulsive and immature main character with a habit of being creepily parasocial.
You really are obsessed with me.
I think I've got everything. Even down to how you scratch your butt.
Yet the movie itself annoyingly frames these terrible traits as reflections of her passion and determination, when there's nothing at all inspiring or charming about a character getting so lost in racing fantasies that she endangers children, or carjacking an expensive vehicle for her own drift racing amusement.
Who the high-octane heck are you?
Oh my gosh, you're my greatest fan! I'm your biggest hero,
Get out of my car!
there's a difference between an endearing dreamer and acting like Tom Green and Freddy Got Fingered. Don't get me wrong, Ed isn't any less unlikable as an arrogant star, but at least the movie addresses his flaws, gives him a sympathetic backstory that does explain his behavior, and lets him grow by the end. Sure, Edda has her own trauma baggage, and she does ultimately save the day, but the film rarely ever criticizes her mistakes and refuses to acknowledge her worst traits as red flags that need fixing. Not even the Grand Prix racing is exciting to watch, because these races are strangely sluggish and lacking in any momentum. Yeah, the Grand Prix host throws in some high-octane futuristic obstacles, and our mystery villain has his fair share of cheat gadgets. But these flashy hindrances are not only out of place in this film's mundane world, but also come off as desperately gimmicky.
Pretty dangerous! Oh, Cindy! That is not cool! That's cold!
Last of all, we also get a patronizingly awful attempt at a twist villain. You see, the film thickly layers on-the-nose shadiness onto a blatant red herring, that crap, all while leaving zero early clues for the real culprit, Magnus, as the film weirdly thinks that Magnus's runner-up streak is enough of a good hint.
Magnus's starting position in tomorrow's race will be number 2.
Yes, thank you.
Plus, the movie even cheekily tries to make Magnus sound more like Nat Crab in off-camera scenes.
That stuck-up Ed won't know what hit him!
It's so condescending how this film consistently mistakes cheap tricks and heavy-handed misdirection for clever audience deception. Oh, and because Magnus's role as a comic relief goofball has been far more developed than his sinister side, he ends up making for an embarrassingly incompetent and unfriending villain once unmasked. So much so that it's kind of hard to believe that he's the genius scientist behind this whole master plan. What irks me the most, though, is how Edda tries to play detective, but clearly cannot let go of her stubborn insistence that Nat Crab is the villain, even after Magnus himself finally hints that he's very likely the culprit. And said narrow-minded and boxed-in bias just makes her come off as an immature and foolhardy investigator.
Nat Crab is sabotaging the race. First, he threatens me, and now he's trying to put the blame on poor Magnus.
In conclusion, this dreck of a movie is one of the most vexing films I've ever seen. It's certainly colourful, busy, and silly enough to keep kids quiet for 90 minutes, but children deserve much better than insulting slop that's essentially a thinly disguised theme park commercial. Sneaks. Ty and Maxine are a pair of fancy sneakers that are worn by financially struggling teen athlete Edson. But the siblings get split up, with Ty ending up on the streets and Maxine becoming a prisoner for the collector. This movie is pretty much Toy Story but with shoes. Now sure, there are some decent examples of this Pixar formula done okay, but Sneaks does nothing less than turn toys into sneakers and is chock full of creative misfires. To begin with, Sneaks is a painfully slow movie that seriously struggles to draw out its paper-thin setup, as it has no idea how to make a sneaker trapped in a room engaging or interesting, and features vapid comedy that really shows the limitations of shoe jokes.
I've played them all, you know. Julius Sneaker.
To squeeze or not to squeeze? That is the question.
Despite having way too much time on its hands, the movie also has a hard time developing any of its relationships. Most notably, Ty and JB's friendship, which rushes JB from being a far from subtle con artist to a sudden big-hearted softie for Ty right out of nowhere.
I got to know the real you. My guy, Ty.
The movie is also very eager to string the audience along with some mystery regarding JB's origins, but the film is so predictable and lacking in nuance that it doesn't take much brainpower to work things out, so everyone can see the twist coming.
That you?
JB?
Oh man, you got old.
Oh, who you calling old?
The film's biggest flex is its star-studded voice cast, and this doesn't pay off either, as not only does it lead to an overlong opening credit sequence, but none of these celebs deliver anything particularly exceptional. Heck, Martin Lawrence gives his sleepest performance to date as JB, and sounds like he's only here for a paycheck.
Whatever, kid, this is the spot. There's fancy food for fancy people wearing fancy shoes.
I think the one and only thing that saves this movie is its villains, who come in two kinds of flavors. The cartoony supervillain, the Forger, who brings some wacky techno menace to the table as an over-the-top Batman-esque baddie.
Look at the sweat collecting on your brow.
and the Collector, a sympathetic fallen basketball star who ties pretty decently into the movie's messages of overcoming failure and how constructive purpose can trump shallow materialism. In all honesty, I actually wish that the Collector was our main character, because his complex redemption arc was far more engaging and relatable than the obnoxious Ty's stock character journey. Yes, Sneaks is a Toy Story 2 knockoff that ended up making its Al more emotionally resonating than its Woody or Buzz. Yeesh. Stitchhead. Stitchhead is a mad scientist Igor-like assistant who has the duty of looking after his master's creations. But Stitch craves more and ends up becoming a circus star. I was quite looking forward to a Burton-esque Stitch punk movie about an outcast joining the circus, considering how Tim himself has kinda lost his touch lately. Unfortunately, Stitchhead was so bland to me that I struggled to even form a strong opinion on it, and came out of the film feeling rather lukewarm. In spite of its quirky premise, Stitchhead lacks a lot of rebellious personality. Children's gothic fairy tales tend to challenge the norm for kids media, but Stitchhead is disappointingly safe and sterilized, almost like it's scared to be too kooky.
When I say Stitch, you say head! Stitch!
Sure, there's no such thing as a completely original film, but Stitchhead has such a hard time finding its own identity that it just becomes a stale rehash of movies in its same camp.
Too long have you been intimidated? Too long have you trembled in terror? Too long have you lived in the shadow of monstrosity?
The film also wants its emotional core to be the bond between Stitchhead and another monster, Creature, but this buddy drama lacks any bite, all because it's a best friendship in name only that originates from naive newborn innocence and not from any believable deep relationship development on the film's part.
You're my bestest best friend ever! I knew that as soon as you said you weren't going to burn me to the ground.
I really wanted to like Stitchhead and admired its sincere intention of teaching the differences between conditional and unconditional love to kids. But it's too busy sticking to comfortable cliches to live up to its own potential. Snow White? Yes, Asylum once again rushed out another Disney remake mockbuster last year, and this one shares many of the same issues as their Little Mermaid cash grab, including over-animated characters with mouths that stretch like they're getting a dental checkup, rambling dialogue that's mainly ham-fisted exposition, and scenes that are so padded out for time that you would think that the editor had been fired.
I shall take my chances. I heard your voices down the hall.
Oh. Is there a concern, my king?
Not at all, but I'm here now, watching the two of you lost in the moment with my beautiful bride-to-be and my enchanting daughter, Snow White.
However, despite everything holding this movie back, I'd still say that it's actually more watchable and better made than Disney's terrible remake. Yes, Disney's Snow White was so dang misguided and incompetent that its very own bargain bin mockbuster surpassed it. That is truly embarrassing. Asylum Snow White is not just the more entertaining bad movie, because its shoddy animation can lead to unintentional hilarity. But unlike Disney's cynical remake, this Snow White isn't trying to desperately appease conflicting potential audiences, and confidently knows exactly how it wants to modernize the grim fairy tale. So we end up with some surprisingly interesting or unique ideas, like the prince and huntsman have been combined into one single character that happens to be Snow's best friend. This not only makes the film's romance come off as natural, because the chemistry is already there from the get-go, but it also makes its assassination order into a personal test of loyalty.
You said you are a man of honor. The king is trusting you for this, the most noble of missions.
On top of this, the evil queen is given a lot to do, because she has this creepy puppet master-like role, and she cleverly keeps the king alive for propaganda purposes.
Is it true? What Lady Hildegard needs me to do?
Yes, Eckert. And this is our only remedy to keep the kingdom safe.
I especially like how she's cursed the gnomes, because it gives a deeper narrative purpose and tense atmosphere to all the mining scenes.
Every second without them pulling jewels from the mine is a waste of my power.
Don't get me wrong, this is still a sloppy Asylum B-movie, so there's also plenty of ridiculous changes too. Like how Snow is tricked by the queen multiple times and stupidly falls for all 3 traps back to back.
I'm not interested in buying a comb, right?
It's the queen! I'll show you once and for all.
Honestly, If this film's screenplay had been given lots of extra fine-tuning and the animation department were granted more resources and time, then this could have actually been a solid fairy tale update. The Rose of Versailles. Based on the manga series by Ryoko Ikeda, this period anime centers on the French Revolution from the perspectives of Marie Antoinette and a royal guard Oscar. The issue with this film is that it tries to adapt 10 volumes of manga into a 2-hour movie, and said ambition's risks are on full display. For starters, this movie made me feel totally nothing, because it's essentially compressing its grand romantic drama, Marie Antoinette's divisive legacy, and serious heavy plots into a glorified recap movie. I mean, not only does it lean on quick music video style montages to get across important story progressions, but its overindulgent attention spent on the eye candy of French luxury aesthetics leads to the commoners just becoming background extras. We also end up with a very meandering pacing structure, all thanks to a constant switch going on between all the lead characters, which just left me wondering what the movie wanted to even be about. And to be honest, I don't think it knows itself. This is a very pretty movie, but only in the context of design, because the actual animation of these beautifully drawn characters leaves a lot to be desired, and is way too rigid to match the film's intended melodrama.
There is nothing you need to say. The joy that I feel is all that I have wanted for so long.
Maybe the beloved original manga or cult 80s TV show tell this story better. I personally don't know. But this film makes for a rubbish introduction for potential new fans. In all truth, I can think of several romance anime shows that came out last year which were 10 times better. Just go watch those instead. Ianu: The Age of Wonders. Based on the Cartoon Network show Ianu, which was inspired by the graphic novel series created by Roy Okupe and Godwin Akpan. Age of Wonders is a prequel TV movie that details how the Fallen One came to be and the origin story for Ianu's parents as superheroes. Now, I wasn't much of a fan of the original Ianu TV show. Sure, it's cool that a female-led fantasy kids cartoon rooted in Yoruba culture exists, but I had mixed opinions on the series itself, and its melodrama failed to wring strong emotions out of me. Age of Wonders just puts a spotlight on the TV show's weakest aspects. From the underwhelmingly flat and poorly synced animation, to an overemphasis on convoluted info dumping before natural storytelling. It's all here, but now it's just a whole season's worth of story squashed into a fast-paced hour-long episode. Age of Wonders also suffers from prequelitis, as it's so preoccupied with expanding its fantasy world's history and setting up every single aspect of the TV show's formula that it doesn't really stand on its own as a solo movie. I wouldn't even say that the film's prequel elements are anything remarkable either. None of the revelations shocked me or took me by surprise, because every origin explanation is pretty straightforward and par for the course.
This child is a miracle. Better yet, she will be a child of wonder.
I did like how the film brought up the concept of heavenly beings' relationship with humanity, and how much responsibility and guilt should be given to entities overseeing human society, even if it did kind of remind me of the worst MCU movie that I've seen. Plus, I was initially interested in the film's debate on darkness coexisting with light.
The conclusion is always the same. Trying to destroy Meiji is akin to destroying sin itself.
There are paths yet to be explored.
However, this philosophical conundrum is quickly cut short once the film decides to focus on just being a typical good versus evil battle, so that it can dedicate its entire finale to the Fallen One's backstory.
Not in this lifetime.
All power to Ianu fans that got a lot out of this prequel special. I'm very happy for you all, and kudos to Cartoon Network for even platforming a superhero animation based on West African mythology and spirituality. But Age of Wonders sadly didn't do anything for me, and I'm actually considering turning to the comics to better understand the franchise's appeal. Scarlet. After the king is framed and executed by his evil brother Claudius, Princess Scarlet tries to get revenge on her uncle, only to end up in purgatory, where she befriends a pacifistic medic called Hijiri and vows to take on the now cult-leading Claudius. I love the work of Mamoru Hosoda so much, and see many of these films as my personal comfort movies. However, not everything he makes is a winner, and his weaker flicks tend to be the ones where he decides to write the screenplay solo, indicating that he maybe needs a co-writer to help guide his direction and ideas. Look, I'm all for letting a director bring their vision to life, but Scarlet shows how pandering to a filmmaker as the genius auteur can lead to disaster. Scarlet is undeniably artistically impressive. from its stunningly painted backgrounds to its exceptionally solid character designs. But the visuals are let down by everything else. Thanks to the movie's over-eagerness to get the ball rolling, we end up with two pretty underdeveloped lead characters, who have hurried backstories and just become blatant mouthpieces for the movie's overt teachings.
I think most of us wish the world could escape the violence. If it doesn't stop somewhere, the fighting will just go on forever.
It's also a film that sets out to explore many deep topics, but instead of dissecting them all through compelling storytelling, we just end up with characters waxing philosophically while wandering a generic isekai world. Yes, we might get a fight now and again, but said conflicts become quickly repetitive, and the reward is always just the villain providing more pontificating sermons.
However, I heard his words firsthand, and I believe this was his meaning. I feel I heard the king's truth speaking to me.
This film is also terrible at subtle nuance, and seems to have very little faith in its audience. So these debates or discussions are riddled with on-the-nose preachiness, and the movie tends to hand a character's epiphany directly to them.
The one you really want to know about is yourself.
Heck, all of the movie's efforts at ambiguity are more frustratingly cryptic than fascinatingly open-ended, with the film over-ambitiously setting out to find life's very meaning, only to be too distracted by its revenge plot to delve into its own existential puzzles, leaving audiences with more unanswered questions than actual profound theories to take away.
What is it to be human? And what is it to die?
Another issue is that Scarlet suffers from being tonally jarring. On the one hand, it desires to be this grounded contemplation on the human condition, but on the other hand, it also wants to rely on goofy cutaway dance scenes to reflect a character's yearning, and depict its villains as cartoony caricatures.
Got the courage?
What's stopping you? That's a cute toy you got.
I wonder, does he know how to use a bow?
Say what you will about Osoda's other weaker films, but at least they're entertainingly weird or have compensating merits. Scarlet though, while well-meaning in its Buddhist-influenced mission to inspire hope, self-forgiveness, and compassion, is just Shakespeare's Hamlet but without the play's tragic depth, and Osoda at his most condescending and pretentious. Elio. After little Elio loses his parents, his aunt takes over as his guardian, but Elio still feels lonely, and resorts to trying to get abducted by aliens to feel loved. However, this leads to him being caught up in a war between the tyrannical Grygon and the peaceful Communiverse. Luckily for Elio though, he also befriends Grygon's cheery, war-hating son, Glorden. When I first saw this film in cinemas, I was very unimpressed. Then, when I rewatched it this year, I realized that I actually really disliked it. Sure, it's sad that Elio has lost his parents and is being bullied, but I think the movie depends way too much on these tragic things to emotionally manipulate us into sympathizing with him, instead of letting his own endearing qualities charm the audience into caring about him. We don't even see him trying to make friends before leaping straight into his alien obsession, and he's actually quite a selfish jerk to his loving aunt and any potential human friends. Look, I'm all for depicting a realistically flawed child character, and I do understand that harsh grief and life changes are big reasons why Elio is acting out, but Elio does not have enough likable traits to make me forgive his excessive bratty antics.
I need to meet aliens! Why? Because there's 500 million habitable planets out there, and one of them's gotta want me! Because obviously you don't!
Compare him to Lilo from Lilo and Stitch, a character with a similar sad backstory who could be selfish, temperamental, or misbehaving, but at least shows that she's sincerely attempting to make friends first and able to empathize with a struggling guardian sister, all while showcasing a lovably weird personality before aliens even enter the picture. You'd think that Elio's space journey would help him to naturally come of age, but every time that he's offered a chance to self-reflect or consider other people's feelings, he just blows off said growth opportunity in a quick heartbeat.
Wow, she must really love you. No, she doesn't. But now I'm free to join the Communiverse, which is where I belong anyway.
And we have to wait a very long time until Elio actually tries to develop. I can't even say that Elio's cute bond with Glorden is anything memorable either, as it just recycles the usual ET formula while assuming that swapping the setting to space dramatically subverts things, when it doesn't, because Elio is still just copying and pasting the same beats from every other Boyne's alien flick.
Are they talking about you? It's a complicated political situation, and you wouldn't understand. Are you a treacherous dissident?
Sure, Our villain is one of Pixar's most menacing antagonists to date, and he does an effective job at striking oppressive fear into the communiverse. But dang did the movie botch his father-son plot with Gordon, as Qui-Gon spends the whole film being a gruff, macho warlord who can't handle parental criticism, and he very rarely ever shows his compassionate side or lets his supposed yearning to try soft parenting slip. Yet Pixar want us to believe that he's actually a sensitive, tender father underneath his hard armor, once again relying on heavy-handed emotional manipulation to make us feel anything for said unearned reveal. Plus, boy do I dislike how the film makes a child be responsible for calling out his dad's bad parenting.
I don't want to be a war machine.
Elio might have a few funny moments, plus a decent subplot involving Elio's aunt playing detective, and kids will love the idea of a cosmic playground full of fun activities. But it's so evident that this is yet another Pixar film that went through creativity tampering production hell. Night of the Zoopocalypse. One dark night, a meteor lands in a zoo, which spreads an alien parasite that turns many animals into zombies. So, every critter must learn to work together in order to survive. Based on the unpublished concept created by Clive Barker, Zoopocalypse uses trademark horror cliches and flares to introduce children to cinema's darkest genre. Now, don't get me wrong, I love that idea in premise, especially when kids' horror movies are rarely greenlit nowadays. But sadly, this film fumbles in so many ways. A major problem is that Zoopocalypse seems to want to please everyone. You see, it tries to satisfy braver kids who can handle intense horror, but it also wants to pander to more sensitive kids by tacking on very silly gags after each scare.
I'm a whale!
While the best kids' horror movies out there cleverly weave their comedy and scares together to create a natural brand of dark humor. Zoopocalypse struggles to balance both, and just creates a tonal contradiction that will divide its young audience. Sure, I do love the movie's efforts to pay loving tribute to classic horror with its atmospheric neon lighting and John Carpenter-esque synth score. However, the movie's attempt to do the whole survivors trapped in a bunker formula is just annoying, because the hostility between these animals is more aggravating than compelling, with every redundant argument feeling like a waste of time. It's like the filmmakers did watch Night of the Living Dead, but only took inspiration from its tense arguments on a surface level.
Looks clear! Okay, on my command!
Stuff it, Fleabag!
Yes, we do center on a buddy dynamic between Gracie the wolf and Dan the mountain lion, but their rushed and erratic relationship development leads to forced dramatic beats or indecisive arcs.
I think you're afraid. I think you're a cowardly mountain lion.
Cowardly?
Oh, and it does not help that the movie's meta-commentary can be excessive and condescending, because it feels the need to use a Randy Meeks-inspired lemur to patronizingly explain every single cliche happening to kids.
How many acts are there?
There are 3 acts.
What happens in the third act?
The third act is the best.
While the original Scream films themselves knew that Randy's nerdy explanations or theories were best used in small doses. Look, I am glad that this movie exists. I really am, because kids who love horror do deserve more beginner options. But quite frankly, Zoopocalypse is a style over substance and tonally confused flick that severely underestimates young horror fans. Aztec Batman: Clash of Empires. This Aztec spin on the Caped Crusader was released to a divisive audience. After seeing it myself, I will say that I struggle to get into it. I mean, it's yet another Elseworld straight-to-video movie that's limited by its need to strictly stick to Batman lore, and the dozenth Batman movie that traumatizes us with parent murder, as the film delivers a well-tread origin story that's often hurt by its fast pacing. I also found the janky animation to be kinda hit or miss, and only very rarely visually engaging. Not to mention, it's an art style that distractingly reminded me of Archer. However, I chatted to a friend of mine, Leo, who happened to be a huge Batman fan and a nerd for all things Aztec. Not only did she have a more fun time than me, but she also assured me that the film is accurate to both Batman canon and Aztec mythology and culture. Sure, it leans into some Hollywood cliches like the natives mistaking white folk for gods, but it's actually quite faithful when it comes to most other things, and does break some modern day assumptions that come from colonist propaganda. On top of this, the film does put our Batman through his own independent spiritual journey, as someone who dares to question Aztec mythology itself in a society founded on and run by traditional beliefs.
Stubborn and maddening are those who see a stone god altar and think it's listening to them.
After hearing my mate's praising perspective, I am now considering re-watching the film, and I would especially love to give the superior Spanish dub a chance. Batman Ninja vs Yakuza League. After returning to Earth, Batman and his family learn that not only has Japan itself vanished, but the Justice League doesn't exist either. On top of this, a rift is also cracked between Earth and a parallel universe Japan called Hinamoto, where the Justice League are now Yakuza and are working for the Twisted Ra's al Ghul. Even though it's been 8 whole years since the first Batman Ninja movie, this sequel skips reintroducing its premise or providing any kind of recap, and drops audiences right into the deep end. This hasty pacing never actually stops either, because the movie seems to be less interested in telling an actual story and more focused on setting up or justifying its series of back-to-back fights, leading to the action becoming too center stage. And the Bat family is so over-advantaged from their end that many of these fights end up lacking tension and fly by pretty fast despite being cinematically framed as epic showdowns.
I turned the Earth's yellow sunlight into the exact same type of light found on your birth planet. Science ninja technique, spectral conversion.
However, these criticisms are more just formalities for me to make, because you know what? This is once again a very fun and bonkers Batman Ninja movie that compensates for its lack of substance with a shameless self-awareness and far-out imagination. Heck, my only fear when going into this film was the chance of it maybe copping out and not being as weird as the first Batman Ninja movie. Luckily though, it's bursting with hilariously ludicrous gags or set pieces.
Now give him hell!
I also wouldn't say that the film totally abandons its comic book roots, because while the film does indulge in its warped versions of the Justice League, it 100% understands the heart of their alter egos, resulting in some natural redemptions.
How can that be? Losing his superpowers wasn't enough to stop him from having a heart of steel.
This film is not going to sway hardcore Batman fans into changing their minds about this very divisive franchise, because it's unabashedly carrying on the first film's tone and spirit. But as a massive weeb who loves the campy side of Batman, I had a pretty good time. In Your Dreams. Stevie and Elliot are a pair of quarreling siblings with conflicting parents that aren't on the same page. Terrified of divorce, Stevie resorts to finding the Sandman in the dream world to fix things. This is definitely a very imaginative film, and one that's distinctly aware of the creative freedom that comes with dreams. Plus, it doesn't skirt around our nightmare's darkest pits either.
Ooh, scary.
However, while I do applaud the film for tackling REM sleep realistically by embracing its illogical nature, this does lead to an adventure that's a tad too frantic, and world building that's greatly hindered by our hero's back and forth consciousness. The only consistent being a giraffe Teddy Coppercaleef, a reject Muppet that might get little kids giggling, but anyone older will just find him annoying.
I'm awesome, you're awesome, she's almost awesome.
Wait, what?
And we do get a recurring antagonist, Nightmare, but she mainly exists as an on-the-nose red herring to stop us from suspecting the Sandman's villainy, who doesn't even come on screen until the film's climax. However, Nightmare does provide another strength of the film, that being its worthwhile message about the value of nightmares, giving children a good lesson that I do think will help kids better process their worst dreams.
Nightmares make us strong, so we can face what's really scary in life. The unknown.
In Your Dreams also tackles divorce, and sets out to teach kids about healthfully accepting it. While I like that it uses the Sandman's creepy illusions to show the downside of forcing a happy family, I do wish that the film fully committed to its goal, because even though Stevie does learn to be at peace with a potentially divided family, In Your Dreams kind of cops out before its credits. Maybe because Netflix were too chicken to have a slightly bitter ending, and we sadly miss a huge opportunity to normalize divorce for kids. Diary of a Wimpy Kid: The Last Straw. When Frank Heffley gets fed up of his son Greg's reckless and lazy attitude, he threatens to send his son to a strict military school. However, if Greg can become an elite wood chipper scout, then his dad will drop the idea. But Greg just ends up cheating to get his badges. As a standalone movie, The Last Straw is a generic yet decent father-son film. But compared to the rest of the animated Wimpy Kid flicks, it's the franchise at its very best. Maybe that shows how low the bar really is, but I'll totally take an okay Wimpy Kid movie over a bad one any day. Sure, the film still suffers from the series' usual try-hard slapstick and uninspired, gross-out humor, plus the movie's choice to structure itself around different badges makes for jumpy storytelling and gives the film a lack of focused identity.
What is this, some sort of arts and crafts project?
I thought I'd circle back to the physical fitness stuff later on. I'm gonna earn my leadership badge.
However, Last Straw at least knows how long to spend on each challenge and is willing to end an activity or sport before the jokes run dry. So even though the movie is erratically switching badges, it's humbly aware of the limits of its comedy sketches.
Ha ha ha! In your face, Patty!
Although the main saving grace for The Last Straw is, surprisingly, the father-son dynamic. You see, Greg's parents are usually the worst aspect of a Wimpy Kid animated flick, yet here, they're more realistically flawed than annoyingly awful like usual. Frank may be strict, but he wants what's best for his son, and the two do end up developing a believable and endearing bond.
Well, the 7th Regiment didn't have cannons. That's what made the Continental Army's victory against the British so much more significant. They never gave up in the face of a challenge.
But I do really like how Frank does maturely question his parenting while letting his wife be a needed voice of reason.
Susan, our middle schooler didn't even know how to use a key.
And now he does, so what's the big deal?
No, Susan, if he didn't know how to use a key, what else haven't I taught him?
Plus, it's great to see dads opening up to each other about their vulnerabilities and insecurities as masculine parents, something that should be normalized more in cinema.
I can't seem to do anything without getting under Weston's skin these days. Is it like that with you and Greg?
Well, we don't always get along, if that's what you're asking.
Sure, Greg is his usual bratty and mischievous self, but we can see that his growing respect for his dad is real, and the boy does later end up turning his past mistakes into actual survival tactics, showing that he can learn and improve. Last Straw may be no Goofy movie or National Lampoon's Vacation, but its heart is in the same place. And I really do hope that it spells a brighter future for this mediocre franchise. Who knows, maybe I'll start looking forward to these annual specials.
I'm gonna cancel your registration. I don't want to lose out on spending more time with my son. I only get you for a little while, you know?
A Loud House Christmas movie, Naughty or Nice. When Lincoln Loud learns that he's been put on the naughty list, he hacks into the North Pole servers to make a switch. But this just results in all bad people getting whatever they want. So, the Louds journey to the North Pole to fix things, only to discover that the fading of Christmas magic has turned Santa naughty. Look, I'm not going to act like this Loud House movie is devoid of the franchise's usual criticisms. Like how Mum and Dad Loud are still overly passive parents and lost in their own bubbles, and are once again reduced to just being comic relief extras.
This year's figgy pudding will be my Mona Lisa! I will protect you at all costs.
However, some Loud House movie cliches are improved on. For instance, while the huge ensemble cast of sisters does result in a lot of subplots, each sister's dilemma is festively tied together thanks to the Christmas setting, and most of these characters' low-stakes arcs do pay off in the main narrative later. Sure, the film's premise of bratty kid fails to understand the meaning of Christmas and must learn its real value by the end has become the staple of most cartoon specials. But the movie does try to tweak the recipe a tiny bit. For example, while Lincoln does need to develop a more sincere sense of seasonal compassion, the corporate bureaucratic elves also need to come to grips with morality not being strictly black and white. Sure, I've seen this kind of idea tackled in another Christmas movie before, but I quite like how our characters organically realize this epiphany through their own personal experiences, because it makes for natural growth.
I was so dug into my coding and algorithms, I didn't see what makes a person
a person.
Naughty or Nice is not the first piece of media to portray an evil version of Santa, but this is still an entertainingly narcissistic bad boy rockstar take on a naughty Father Christmas, who is very gifted at gaslighting a self-doubting Lincoln, plus the movie comes up with consistently hammy ways to villainize St. Nick's wintry charms.
You loads like my new ride?
All in all, Naughty or Nice doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but it's no disappointing stocking coal either. To put it plainly, it's just a palatable, home-baked Christmas cookie, and that can be enough sometimes. Heidi, Rescue of the Lynx. Based on the books by Johanna Spiri, this Swiss Alps adventure centers on a little energetic girl called Heidi, who saves a lynx kitten from a trap, nurses it by herself, and goes on a journey to return the baby back to its mother. I won't beat around the bush. This film is generic with a capital G. It's your standard child and cute pet movie with a greedy hunter / businessman who wants land power thrown in for good measure.
I came here on a mission to make Durfleet an even better place.
However, the movie is also good with a capital G. To put it bluntly, it's a very cozy movie. A countryside flick with beautiful alpine backdrops, laid-back cottagecore slice-of-life scenes, and an affectionate love towards all things nature. The cherry on top of this humble pie being Heidi's responsible but warm and gentle granddad, who deeply treasures his granddaughter, but also guides her into making the best decisions possible, a sentiment that's made even more profound by how raising Heidi has pulled him out of a dark phase.
Your aunt brought you to me, and life became worth living again.
It's also inspiring to watch not only vulnerable kids using their own youthful ingenuity to achieve great things, but also see an old man overcoming his aging body to show his impressive outdoor survival experience.
We'll camp here tonight and take your lynx friends to the tree line in the morning. After that, we're going home.
Sure, this film's villain is far from a menacing antagonist, but he compensates for this greatly as a Weasley schemer, who can charismatically sway the locals into trusting him, while also carefully planting the seeds for his crooked web right under their very noses.
I don't take kindly to people who stand in my way.
Is that so?
Nothing personal. It's just business, you know.
This is not a film that'll blow you away or anything, but it is a nice little comfort film to wind down to with a cup of Swiss hot choc. Barbie and Teresa, Recipe for Friendship. One day, Teresa's grandma teaches Barbie and Co. about Mexican cooking, but when Teresa's cousin, Marisol, gets injured during her restaurant's launch, Barbie and friends head to New York to help her. Contrary to how this film was titled and marketed, Recipe for Friendship is less about Teresa and a friendship with either Barbie, and a bit more centered on Brooklyn and Malibu Barbie's conflict as mates. Sure, there's a running plot about Teresa's struggles with perfecting the best tamale for her cousin's restaurant, but the focal tension comes from Brooklyn's choice to commit to the restaurant and a Broadway dancing gig. While this does make me suspect that maybe Mattel had low faith in Teresa as a star lead, that's not to say that Brooklyn and Malibu's drama has no merits. Quite the opposite. I actually appreciated how this conflict is tackled, as it doesn't oversimplify the situation as one being right and the other being wrong, but instead recognizes the many colors of the ongoing fallout. Like, sure, Barbie is being condescending by assuming that everyone shares her same anger at Brooklyn, and for thinking that Brooklyn is incapable of multitasking dual commitments. However, Brooklyn herself is acting immature for pouting over missing out on activities, when she should be aware of the consequences of saying yes to two different responsibilities.
We'll tell you all about the inspiration tour of New York Rafa took us on.
Rafa? I would have taken you around.
Luckily, everything is also resolved really well too, because not only do the Barbies repair their friendship bridge with open, healthy communication, but Brooklyn also gets to prove her ability to pull off multiple commitments and show how said experience has improved her mindset on work ethics.
I love performing, but I don't know if I wanted to be my everything like it is for Emmy.
As a cooking movie, I wouldn't say that the film's low-rendered, plasticky-looking food has much aesthetic appeal, especially when you compare said cuisine to more mouth-watering food cartoons. However, Recipe for Friendship does capture the heart and soul of cooking as a craft, not just as a way to carry on a piece of cultural heritage, but also as a symbolic gesture of love and an expression of individuality. Not to mention, the film's fun cooking scenes are bound to inspire some junior chefs into stepping into the kitchen themselves.
There's no secret. Just make the masa, add the filling, put one olive in the center, wrap it up, and steam with love.
Many might argue that this film heavily over-romanticizes New York by depicting it as far more festive, bright, and colorful than it is in reality, something that might disappoint kids who later decide to visit the city in person. On the other hand, Recipe for Friendship is clearly a love letter to Broadway musicals, and so this exaggerated aesthetic actually blends perfectly with the film's showy and whimsical songs.
You say you need some help. You wanna feel inspired. This place has everything that your heart can desire.
In the grand scope of Barbie movies, Recipe for Friendship is just okay. It's a decent and sincere celebration of New York's dazzling side, Mexican cuisine's cultural importance, and sisterhood in the restaurant business that endearingly compares friendship building to perfecting a well-cooked meal. Pets on a Train. It's Christmas time. An expert thief Falcon has promised a festive feast for his fellow animals. So the raccoon agrees to help Hans the badger hijack a train for its food stash, but said heist is actually a trap for Hans's nemesis, Rex the police dog. So all the pets on the train must work together to foil this unhinged train conductor. I wasn't sure what to expect when I went into this movie, but you know what? I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun I had. For starters, it's a rather unconventional kids film that doesn't underestimate its young audience's patience and intelligence. I mean, the movie is essentially a single location film that trusts kids to not get bored by a whole flick set on a train, proving that bottle movies don't have to be exclusive to adults, and isolated character stories can be gripping for young folks too.
I realized something was up when you destroyed the TV. Hans was about to give you up.
It's not what you think.
My suspicions were confirmed with the food supply.
There's also a genuine sense of threat on this train, and the film does not hold back when it comes to putting these pets in danger. Sure, Hans is sometimes the butt of a joke as a villain, but he's still a truly intimidating tyrant as a train master, and he even becomes a face-to-face physical threat in the finale.
No one stops my train.
On top of all of this, the movie also sharply satirizes media culture by exposing its more exploitative side, from clout-hungry influencers to the tragedy-chasing news circus. It's biting social commentary that will hopefully encourage kids to question or challenge the media that they digest.
That little girl crying after the crash will be entertainment gold.
It's the perfect boost for both of our careers.
Even though most of these pets are timid and pampered domestics with one-note personalities, the movie's very high stakes push each one into embracing their braver sides, and every pet becomes far more than what their owners have marketed them as. While Falcon's secret as Hans's hacker does add some extra tension to the already stressful ride, the movie can't escape the trappings of the lies revealed cliché, and its original momentum does briefly get hindered by scenes of moping or self-berating.
I never should have listened to Hans. None of this would have happened. No one would be in danger. I'm so stupid.
However, Pets on a Train is still an entertaining popcorn flick that's basically Speed meets Over the Hedge, with a sprinkle of Christmas and a dash of social satire, making for a very unique kids movie with a stage play style structure and a fresh mix of different genres. Endless Cookie. This Canadian documentary follows filmmaker Seth Scriver and his Cree brother Peter as the two try to turn Peter's life stories or urban legends into a series of animations. This movie is very much like Marmite. It's either for you or it isn't, and I can understand both reactions. On the one hand, it's a rambling and disjointed film that frequently switches its focus or topics on a whim. A very chaotic structure that's not helped by the movie's limited animation and distracting background gags that can interrupt a chat or interview.
And we'll never benefit from
Whoa, good one.
On the other hand though, if you are into experimental surrealism, family slice of life, the art of filmmaking, and stoner comedy, then Endless Cookie is for you. And I would say that I'm part of that niche weird audience. At first, I was a little puzzled and frustrated by the film. But the more I realized what it was going for, the more I found myself being hypnotized by its dreamy atmosphere and self-aware sense of humor.
Why is this pizza scene going on so long?
Well, you know, it's strange because pizza is kind of like a cultural thing for people that lived in Toronto.
Oh, and I couldn't help but be drawn into every far-out story from Peter, with each tale being more bizarre and darkly funny than the last.
Please, mother...
And there's a little old lady sitting in there cutting up on caribou.
It's also great to see an animated film giving vivid representation to a Canadian Indigenous culture, not only highlighting the struggles the First Nations face, but also documenting the everyday mundane lives of a large Cree family, a ragtag bunch of quirky relatives that get so much development and screen time that you'll end up feeling like they've been your neighbors for years.
Eat this, it's good for you. It's like, really like backing away, like, come on, eat this, it's good for you. It's caribou.
Caribou? Oh yeah, I love caribou. Ooh, caribou soup.
If you put King of the Hill and The Midnight Gospel into a blender, then you'd pretty much have Endless Cookie, a meandering film that may be rough and janky, but dang does it scratch all of my itches. Zootopia 2. Nick and Judy are back for another case. This time, they need to expose the corrupt Linksley family, who are trying to gentrify Zootopia by expanding Tundra Town. In order for our heroes to do this, they'll need to team up with Gary the Snake, who can lead them to the truth behind Zootopia's real origins. I wasn't sure what to think of this Disney sequel on my initial viewing, but unlike with Elio, a rewatch actually made me better appreciate it. To be clear, I don't think that Zootopia 2 is anywhere close to being perfect, as the actual investigation doesn't exactly inspire a strong story structure, because the film is essentially one long chase scene and many of the clues for our officers are conveniently easy to spot, casually given out by passing strangers, or neatly laid out. However, Zootopia 2 is thematically solid, thanks to a rich and consistent deep dive into our lead's unconventional pairing and personal insecurities. Sure, Nick's old instincts and emotional stunting, and Judy's denial and desperate overeagerness are driven a bit too hard to the audience, making the two a little much at times.
No one will believe us. Not without proof.
Believe it. They aren't gonna just arrest us. The Lynxes want us dead.
We need it to solve the case.
Judy,
We have to solve the case.
But I like how the film addresses the imperfections of their teamwork, while also reminding us that they still have natural chemistry, showing that while this is a partnership that's very rough around the edges, that doesn't mean that it's worth bailing on or destined for disaster.
Excuse me, is this yours?
Why, yes.
Well, allow me.
Clever fox.
The most notable issues with these two are the poor communication skills and inability to embrace their differences, which become the biggest thorns in their investigation. But we luckily get some lovably eccentric side characters that demonstrate healthy openness and self-love to the fox and bunny. Oh, and dang do I love Gary the Snake in particular, a scaly cinnamon roll who could be a big silly goofball while still being a highly competent hero for justice and a role model for consent ethics.
Permission to hug.
Okay, so we do get another twist villain this time, and I admittedly have mixed feelings on this. On the one hand, the film does a pretty poor job at foreshadowing Porbert's darker motives and desperate want to fit in with his snobby family, and I do find it insulting how Disney assumed that we would never suspect them to play the twist villain card again, when it's officially become the most predictable cliche for their modern films. Plus, it's mighty convenient that Bellwether's portrayal from the first film didn't make Judy more cautious and alert about overly nice characters in this sequel. But on the other hand, at least Porbert retains his awkward personality once he goes rogue, because this makes for a much more natural villain transition than Bellwether's.
Oh my gosh, my heart is pounding. Oh, I thought you knew.
And the nerdy Lynx's frenzied despair in the finale does give him a little menace.
I'll destroy the patent, that town, and everything in it.
While Disney's animated film releases have been on a downward spiral over the years, Zootopia 2 was actually one of their better modern efforts. By no means is it a new classic or a diamond in the rough, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. Dogman. When Officer Knight ends up in a tragic accident, doctors come up with the wild idea to stitch his dog partner's head to his owner's body to create Dogman. Our crime-fighting K9 must now juggle stopping the villainous Petey and raising Petey's abandoned clone, Petey Jr. While DreamWorks doesn't exactly recapture the same magic as their underrated Captain Underpants movie, this Dogman adaptation still carries the same wacky Pilkian sense of humor and has its own endearing charms. I mean, the studio managed to take a weirdly macabre premise and turn it into sweet and light-hearted entertainment while winking at the audience, not only seeing the silly side of a part man and part dog, but also embracing the inherent tragedy of a pet losing their precious owner. Not to mention, Dogman himself is a lovable cinnamon roll of a lead character, who retains the best qualities of a real dog, while also showing how a non-speaking main character can hold a whole movie. Even though this is a very silly movie with its tongue planted firmly in its cheek, it also tackles the theme of parenthood with a genuine perspective, from showcasing green flag parenting traits and the hardships of juggling dual responsibilities as a working adult, to bluntly acknowledging that irredeemable parents do exist, but that their damaged offspring can choose to break the cycle of abuse.
This world has a lot of problems, but it can never be a horrible place, because you're in it.
While I am waiting on a Captain Underpants 2, Dogman is still a fun treat that has enough heart to come across as earnest, yet is also plenty self-aware to balance out said wholesome innocence with a little bit of sarcastic edge.
Evil villains don't write paychecks!
The gold coins you gave me were chocolate!
The Bad Guys 2. This DreamWorks sequel brings back our favourite furry crooks, but this time, they're struggling to find work as ex-cons, and end up being forced to collab with the cunning bad girls. Bad Guys 2 is another story about the gang being unfairly framed, but more of the same thing isn't technically a downside. Heck, if you're going into this film with the desire to see more stylized animation, more engagingly funny banter between quirky outcasts, and more sneaky heists with intricate twist reveals, then you will be pleasantly satisfied. However, Bad Guys 2 also has enough originality to justify its existence. Like, we get to see these characters attempting to move forward in a sharp satire of how the work industry fails at owning ex-criminals.
I got a job! This is fantastic, man! Oh, by the way, Craig, you know...
For a fraction of the film, the bad guys end up translating their impressive street smarts into legitimate talents as amateur crime investigators, in a very entertaining reverse on the gang's usual formula.
Each of the robberies occurred within a 3-minute window.
So?
3 minutes is the loop rate of most standard security consoles, which means whoever did this
patched into security from the inside.
On top of these things, there's plenty of spicy romantic tension going on too. From the forbidding chemistry between Wolf and Governor Diane.
I think it's cute. Gives you character.
Oh, do I have a concussion or is the governor flirting with me?
To the unhinged but strangely adorable flames between Snake and another Batgirl.
Sorry, doll. Look, it's nothing personal.
You are so hot right now.
Snake!
Yeah?
Speaking of, the Bad Girls are arguably the best addition to this franchise. A trio of villainesses that are fiercely confident, but also showcase crafty deception that'll stun you at every turn. Although, there's also a poignancy to how the Bad Girls reflect the bad guys' old selves, and the bitter truth behind why most outlaws give up on redeeming themselves.
You think if you play nice and follow their rules, they'll just see you for who you truly are. But let me tell you, they won't.
The piece de resistance of this highly enjoyable animated blockbuster is how the film ambitiously decides to take its action right into space, giving us a bonkers climax that not only tests our hero's ability to heist outside Earth, but also delivers a slick anti-gravity showdown that brings a vigorous intensity to its weightless combat. While this isn't my favourite DreamWorks sequel, it's still a stellar effort, and a prime example of keeping what worked before while delivering extra goods. 100 meters. As children, Takashi and Tagami are bonded over a shared passion for the 100-meter run. But once the two grew up, they became competitive rivals in the professional sports world. If you find slow and quiet animated movies to be too boring, then I can't really recommend this film to you, I'm afraid, because 100 meters is a very meditative anime movie that aims for a serious, mature tone, and focuses on the human condition over wacky gags or over-the-top spectacle. Personally, I found myself deeply invested and moved by this poignant running drama. It's a sports flick that manages to successfully turn the fleeting 100-meter dash into pure cinema, all by carefully slowing down each blinking or miss it race while letting detailed rotoscoping depict what live action can't. There's something contagiously inspiring about the movie's love letter to a sprint that only lasts half a minute, so much so that you might actually come out of this film with the ambition to try it out yourself. However, this movie also features a truly sympathetic portrayal of sports mental health, a very important topic that gets sidelined by the industry's emphasis on winning streaks and celebrity image, with the film depicting the stress and anxiety of athletic pressures with eerie accuracy, while also tackling depression through tasteful realism and a compelling dramatic understanding. Honestly, if you are going through either of these things, 100 meters will likely validate you with a comforting catharsis.
You don't have to cope with your anxiety. This world is filled with possibilities of failure. But the thing is, that's what gives life its charm.
I also really like how this film explores sports rivalry in a healthy way. Like, sure, these childhood mates do become deeply competitive on the racetrack, but their friendship remains strong despite this, and they can also have each other's backs as mentally struggling athletes.
What is the point of it? Why do we continue to run?
It's obvious, isn't it? For us to give it our all.
100 meters is a deeply contemplative and existential anime that's able to be vulnerable and melancholic, yet also incredibly inspiring and motivational in its efforts to add meaning to life. Check it out soon if it sounds like your cup of tea. Predator, Killer of Killers. This action horror anthology centers on a trilogy of Yautja attacks on 3 different parts of world history, and ends with each imprisoned prey being forced into a duel to the death. Dramatic adult animated features are becoming a dying breed in Western cinema, so it's great to see a film like this breaking into 2025's lineup. It's a slick and mature film that takes the Predator IP and has the utmost fun with pitting these iconic sci-fi villains against a variety of period-era badasses. I will 100% deny that the film is just superficial fighting though, because each intense brawl is backed up by detailed action storytelling, deeply emotional motivations, and unsettling horror principles. These aren't just exciting battles between heroes and villains. They are tales of human endurance that intricately develop our human prey into relatable survivors, who may have been chosen as targets but refuse to be defined as such, and will confidently and tactically use their timelines, environments, and limitations to outweigh these over-advantaged advanced aliens. That's the thing, as violently brutal and barbaric as the film can be at times, it's also a surprisingly uplifting and inspiring anthology, with a theme of triumphant adversity and unlikely camaraderie in a cynical world. The film even concludes with a positive message about how global cultures can overcome their differences and selflessly have each other's backs in a resistance against unjust rules and remorseless evil. I am Frank Elder. This prequel to the cult Mexican horror anthology show Frank Elder's Book of Spooks tells the origin story of Frank Elder herself, and how she entered her own creation's universe to become their savior, only for the royal nightmare maker, Progustus, to get in the way as a jealous creative. Now, while I did call this a prequel, it would be much more fair to say that it's an extended version of the show's 6th episode, which was already a short, contained telling of Frankie's backstory. Frank Elder's love of the written word and joy for literature itself is downright contagious. Whether she's lost in her own imagination as an author, or deeply curious about how this fantasy world naturally functions.
Is this real or imaginary? How many types of terrors are there? Is a monster the same as a terror? How long does an average terror live?
The film is also very aware of the weird idea of Frank Elder's creations turning sentient, and actually fully embraces said existential dread by addressing the strange blur between reality and fiction, a surreal, dreamlike experience that's made further psychedelic thanks to the film's handcrafted puppets, which can fall under the contrasting umbrellas of beautifully strange or full-on nightmare fuel. This is also a romance film. Sure, it's a very fantastical and old-fashioned kind of love story, but there's an earnest sincerity to both characters' feelings, and the movie refuses to naively portray said relationship as perfect.
I thought I wanted the best for you, but I was only thinking of myself. I was wrong. I know it's not much, but I'm sorry.
However, the beating heart of the film is Frankie's arc, the tale of a talented author with huge potential who's either misogynistically rejected as a female author of the macabre or torn down and exploited by an envious male rival, giving us a powerful and inspiring feminist journey of reclaimed agency and personal confidence gain that organically shapes Frank Elder into the high-spirited and wonderfully eccentric ghost host that fans love.
Because I am the master of my destiny! I am the writer of my own life!
The day the Earth blew up, when Daffy and Porky get jobs at a bubblegum factory, they uncover an alien conspiracy to contaminate a brand new gum flavor. So, Daffy, Porky, and their new, weird but bright friend Petunia must foil this invasion scheme. An original, fully animated, and theatrically released Looney Tunes movie is a miracle in its own right. But we're extra lucky that it's also simply a really good Looney Tunes film. The Day the Earth Blew Up pays loving tribute to the golden vintage age of classic Warner Bros. Cartoons, while also giving a fresh and exciting modern spin to the series. It's a film that naturally blends its hilarious vaudevillian comedy with genuine cosmic scares, all by making the jokes serve as seasoning for the many intense thrills. It also helps that this film helms the best Looney Tunes movie villain as well. A campy and expressive, yet also very menacing alien invader who greatly utilizes his versatile hosts, while being backed up by the flamboyantly charismatic voice of the criminally underrated character actor Peter McNichol.
I'll just leave you two to work things out. Oh, and do enjoy the front row seat of me blowing up the Earth!
Petunia Pig might have faded into obscurity in Toon's history, but this film confidently brings her back with a wonderful update, giving us a quirky female character that's actually full-on strange and wacky.
Ooh, I wonder what it tastes like.
But also the goat of the movie is an unconventional but very qualified scientist. Oh, and don't get me started on how much I squeed over the adorable cuteness of a shy and awkward romance with Borgie.
Sorry, I tend to stutter when I get a little nervous.
Oh, no need to apologize. I stutter even when I'm not anxious.
While Porky and Daffy have always been a solid cartoon duo, this film truly elevates their iconic partnership by making their bond into the heart of the film. Not only finding golden humor to the dynamic of a nervous, jittery pig and a cocky, impulsive duck,
wooden steps must be free from holes and safe to walk on. That should work!
but also exploring a brotherly relationship that's been challenged by this invasion, as the film pushes the two to address the flaws of their friendship, but also constructively improve on said imperfections for the sake of saving the Earth.
This is a pretty important job, and I'm liable to mess it up. Maybe Petunia can do it.
The Day the Earth Blew Up has rapidly changed the very reputation of Looney Tunes cinema. Little Amelie, or the Character of Rain. Based on the semi-autobiographical book by Amelie Nothomb, this Japan-set film centers on a toddler called Amelie, who tries to navigate the world as a Belgian child born and raised in Japan, all while firmly believing the Japanese spiritual notion that toddlers are gods. The strength of this beautifully animated gem lies in its deeply authentic take on a child's mental development, as it asks the audience to see the world through a toddler's eyes, showing us not only what makes her happy, afraid, excited, or sad, but also what will trigger her early traumas. It's a character development that's so fleshed out that we end up maybe knowing more about Amelie than her own parents. This side perspective is further enriched by the fact that she's been born into Japanese culture, and she genuinely wants to learn everything she can about it out of passionate curiosity, a sentiment that a loving Japanese nanny is more than happy to indulge, resulting in Amelie's deepest bond in the whole movie.
La première partie de ton prénom, Amé, veut dire pluie en japonais.
C'était un nom qui m'allait à merveille.
At the same time though, the film does not dance around the fact that this is post-war Japan. So while Amelie lives in peaceful innocence as a naive 2-year-old, she's also surrounded by the shadows of World War II and the scars that this conflict left behind. Or while Amelie herself faces her own losses throughout the film. Although, as grim as that sounds, the film tenderly handles the topic of grief with compassion and provides the audience with a comforting reassurance regarding accepting loss.
Le monde est triste. Tout s'oublie, tout s'efface.
Mais non, je ne suis plus là, mais tu me vois. Les souvenirs restent.
Okay, but is Amelie really a god? Well, that's actually left as a mystery. A nuanced ambiguity that reflects the enigma surrounding a child's messy and confusing strong emotions, and how they're yet to realize that the world doesn't actually revolve around them, leaving us to entertain theories over whether Amelie is really a sacred entity, or if we're just seeing the imaginative delusions of a child with a god complex.
Alors non, je ne suis pas Dieu. Mais croyez-moi, c'est beaucoup plus amusant comme ça.
Lost in Starlight, Ju is an astronaut that's dealing with the grief of losing a mother, who died long ago in her own space mission. One day though, Ju meets a friendly but cheeky musician named Jay, and the two start dating. However, Ju is determined to travel to Mars, and this is going to challenge a new romance. One thing that I love about this Korean animated film is its semi-realistic take on the future. Instead of over-exaggerating the world in 25 years' time, the movie finds this soft spot right between the modern world today and a neon-lit Blade Runner-style future, resulting in a depiction of the year 2050 that's believably mundane, yet also breathtakingly pretty.
Come on, let me see your face. Turn on your camera.
Fine. Here's my crestfallen face.
The film's central romance is just as naturally executed. Sure, we get the usual meet cute, but it's organically awkward. Plus the movie is so good at letting the flirty tension sizzle with a low flame that the couple's eventual first ever kiss feels like a volcanic explosion. Ju and Jay might have their disagreements or quarrels, but they can also healthily communicate and self-reflect. No relationship is perfect because humans are inherently messy creatures, and the film knows this without going overboard.
You have a pretty boyfriend.
You're just figuring that out?
No style to speak of, no money at all, and not an inkling of patience, which is why he's here.
I'm glad.
I also adore how this couple challenges tired gender cliches by letting Jay be a sensitive, creative soul in touch with his feelings, and depicting Ju as the smarter character without Jay ever feeling insecure or inferior. Heck, the most adorable thing about these two is how they're each other's biggest fans.
I know I'm not a musician, but that song, you know, your song, I like Jay's version more.
As romantic as the film is though, it's also a story about dealing with trauma. From Ju's grief over her mother's shocking passing, to Jay's performer anxiety as a hesitant frontman for a band. The film explores these mental health struggles by not only validating both, but also inspiringly comparing living life and chasing dreams with space travel itself. An out-of-world experience that's very daunting, scary, and full of risks, but also exciting and rewarding. Lost in Starlight is a powerful film that explores the raw, naked emotions of humanity, while also celebrating how amazingly strong humans can be too. Whether that means overcoming our fears to reach our dreams, achieving the very impossible, or how love can be durable enough to distance the stars. Arco. In a distant future, a little boy called Arco steals his sister's time-traveling suit and ends up in a different timeline, where he befriends a girl called Iris and gets chased down by a trio of paranormal hunting brothers. There's a charming simplicity to Arco that you'd usually find in a Hayao Miyazaki film, a Ghibli-esque blend of realistic animation and fantastical whimsy that's quaint and relaxing.
When someone holds out their hand, you shake it. It's the polite thing to do. Otherwise, people start thinking you're weird, and will start asking you questions.
One thing that I love about the film is how it slowly and carefully drip feeds its exposition. There's no excessive world building dumping to take in all at once, because Arco settles for having a little mystery and keeps us invested in learning more about both timelines.
Like this? Wow. It looks just like home.
Speaking of, I really like how these futures get to make social commentary by just existing, with Arco's era illustrating where humanity could end up if the world floods, and Iris's time showing both ecological decay and an overdependence on robot technology as a society. Both timelines serving as stark warnings about where we may be headed, but without the film resorting to ham-fisted preaching to get said satire across, as Arco is less of an environmental lecture and more just a story of friendship that happens to be taking place in a dystopia.
They're mailboxes. Mailboxes? They're for receiving messages, but we don't use them anymore. You only really get bad news in them.
While Arco and Iris are very sweet and authentically written kids, with adorable and innocent childhood crushes on each other.
Ugh. It works.
I'd actually say that our other major characters steal the film. Like Mickey, Iris's nanny bot, who might have been designed to be a caretaker, but they later show a selfless heroism and deep humanity that goes beyond programming code.
Iris!
Stop right there. Stop right there.
Or the hilarious and snazzily dressed brothers that serve as the best example of comedy villains done right that I've seen in years. A wacky trio that can be best described as, what if the Three Stooges joined the Men in Black?
Wonderful. We have our proof. Wonderful. Oh, I forgot to press record.
What?
No. I'm really sorry.
No.
Arco proves that animated movies don't need to be grand epics or distracting spectacles. Sometimes they can just be simple and gentle-paced coming-of-age fables with a sprinkle of enchanting imagination and a little sense of danger here and there. To be honest, I really wish that this less is more philosophy was adopted by all animation studios. By the way folks, if you'd like to financially support my channel in return for exciting rewards and perks, then head over to my Patreon to subscribe to your monthly membership today. K-pop Demon Hunters. Huntrix is a famous K-pop band with a huge fan base. Behind closed doors, they're actually a team of demon hunters. Their major success is subtly challenged once the Saja boys appear, who are really demons in disguise. To make tensions worse, Rumi is actually hiding the secret of being part demon herself, and is covertly becoming closer to Saja's frontman, Jinu. This movie was the mega hit of 2025 and entered the mainstream zeitgeist like a nuclear bomb. But you know what? It totally deserves said colourful hype, because it's a brilliantly crafted Sony animation masterpiece. I was already the target audience, as I've been a passionate K-pop fan since I was a teenager, and many know that I love my monster movies. However, the film did more than just appeal to me, it resonated with me deeply too. Firstly, I love how the film gives us a band of female friends who are tightly bonded and are empowered physically and creatively, but also show relatable character flaws, and are allowed to be cartoonily ridiculous as animated women.
Yeah!
The film is also an affectionate love letter to all K-pop fans, and genuinely wants to validate the community's joy for this music genre and its performers. But the movie is also brutally honest about the industry's dark side and the unhealthy parasocial expectations that pop stars face.
I know our faults and fears must never be seen, but look, I'm kind of a difficult person.
An issue that ties neatly into Rumi's internal conflict as a monster-hunting half-demon, and her journey of coming to accept this other side of herself, with said art being further blossomed thanks to an organically grown and nuanced romance.
I spent my whole life keeping this secret, this shame of what I am, and the more I hid this shame, the more it grew and grew until it started to destroy the one thing that gave me a purpose.
I also have to applaud the frenetic and inventive action scenes, which really are a masterclass in how to tell a story through fantasy combat. All thanks to how every single fight incorporates underlying tensions, from the band's ongoing rivalry to Rumi's brewing emotions of self-hate or guilt.
Seriously, what is your problem?
I told you, the song,
I'm not talking about the song, I'm talking about you!
This is also a K-pop musical, and many of the film's songs have already become iconic tracks with huge replay value. These aren't just catchy jams that capture the fun and talent behind K-pop though. They're also solid musical numbers that all have an integral narrative or thematic purpose, each one showing how K-pop can actually have depth and merit when done right. Heck, this soundtrack is so electrifying that I still can't decide my favorite song. However, I do find myself connecting the most with This Is What It Sounds Like, as a public performer who feels very insecure about my authenticity, but really wants to find the confidence to show the world the real me. K-pop Demon Hunter shows how an animated film can be hip, sleek and modern, while still completely retaining dramatic excellence, artistic innovation, and cultural relevance. Feel free to watch my other yearly ranking videos folks. I've been Jambareeqi, cheerio!